Welcome to the Dr. Frank and Steve podcast with your hosts, Dr. Frank Williams and Dr. Steve Snodgrass, MD, FACS, where we discuss a broad range of topics without limitations. Let's get to it. Here's Dr. Frank and Dr. Steve.
Bonjour, I'm Artie, your guide to the creative Space Kids social media and education platform. Here, we offer free rewards-based online courses and play-to-earn gaming. What are you waiting for? Let's get started!
Hello, welcome. This is a Dr. Frank and Steve podcast. I'm Frank Williams. This is Dr. Steven Snodgrass. Welcome back. This is still in the first season of our podcast, and this is going to be episode 7. We're going to be covering something that Steve and I have been working on for a long time and something we're passionate about. It goes right along with the art therapy and art and healing. So I'm going to be doing most of the yapping today, even though this is has a lot to do with healthcare. You're going to hear me talking because this is basically a pet project that I brought to Steve, and we put together, then formulated and came up with ideas, and then actually had our tech teams put it together and then made sure everything worked right so that we can bring it out to the general public. So today's episode is going to be about social media platforms, and the social media platform that Steve and I actually created or co-created for patients, physicians, people who are in the art community, and then we have two sets of platforms, actually, or I should say two separate platforms. One is for the general public or adult patients, if you will, and then we have one that is specifically set up for children, patients, and their families or caregivers, where it is very private, but it's still a full social media network, kind of like your Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. The name of the platforms are, for the adult version, or the art world version, is Creative Space, and the one for the family and children, which is all controlled by parents, and I'll get into that, is actually CreativeSpaceKid.com. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start going through some stuff on this, and then Steve will jump in and ask questions or bring things about. To start off, there's a lot of misconceptions about social media. We all know that social media plays a vital part in today's society because we're a 24/7, 365 community as a world community. So what we wanted to do is say, how can we take the platforms that are out there now, create our own platform in a safe way, allow people to do everything they can do now on those platforms, but have it as a niche market for artists or those who have artistic talents, or family of people who create any type of art. You don't even have to be an artist to do it. It could be a patient who's going through art therapy, or children that are going through art therapy, and they want to connect with family members outside of Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or whatever social media platform that they currently utilize, because a lot of hospitals and a lot of clinical settings use social media to communicate with those patients, allow patients to communicate back, but there's not a direct communication device for messaging, uploading maybe artwork, for a safe space that is wholly and solely dedicated to either patients or who are going through art therapy, or people who are in the art community for specifically artists. So that's not open to the general public. So again, I want to stress the fact that social media can be a tool for good. It can also be a tool for those who are out there to do harm. So everything that we did as far as the children's platform is covered by what's called COPPA, C-O-P-P-A, and that is basically something Congress enacted, which is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, which states what needs to be done and what guidelines need to be met if you're going to be running a children's social media platform. And we meet all those requirements. As a matter of fact, we have gone beyond those requirements because of my background and what I've done in the military as far as law enforcement for anti-terrorist training and being on teams and stuff. And so I wanted to make sure that no matter what happens, we create something that's safe, that allows people the freedom to create communities on it. And like Steve said, allows patients to utilize it, who otherwise may not be able to. As Steve said, you may use art therapy in a lot of different settings, like clinical settings, hospitals. This can be, pre, post, or during, surgical events or long stays in hospitals. Could be a short time stay, but there's a lot of follow-up that's going on. So this just keeps a community active, and not just within family members, but it allows children and adults to reach out in a private way, private social media way, to people they invite or they want to be in touch with, that they know or maybe like-minded, or people they have made friends or want to make friends and keep in touch with, but they don't want to have all their business all over social media. So the sites are private, but they also are very restrictive as far as content. There's no harmful content. There's no keeping of people's stats and records and all that. None of that's done with our sites. This is basically a community platform that allows you to maybe share some of your artwork, or share some of your sculpting, or share some feelings they're having, so that communication drives positive reinforcement and positive attitudes towards healing. So Steve, before I get too technical and bore people here, as my wife says, I can ramble on after 40 years. Do you have a question or anything you'd like to ask?
Well, first, I've got to thank you, because for people who don't know Frank, he's passed. He's a veteran, plus he was a police officer, and his dedication to safety, and to anything that we're doing to protect people that are involved with us is second to none. So I'm very appreciative of that. And for me, tech-wise, it's like I have some sort of poltergeist or something, because I can do things that happen on a computer or some sort of electronic device, and there's absolutely no explanation for it whatsoever.
That would be true.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it appears in different colors, it goes somewhere and then come back, and like you look for it, can't find it. It's so frustrating. But I will say this, is that I actually have done this. I had trouble with a light bulb, doing a light bulb thing. And my wife just said, like, how can you totally rebuild somebody's vascular system, but yet you have trouble with a light bulb? And I said, it's just one of those savant things. You just have to understand. You got to understand. So, but back to your point, I think, I think it's like, at one time I checked on it, there were like 250 websites dedicated to breast cancer. And again, like you say, some of these things can be good, some can be bad, because you can pass along good information, you can pass along bad information.
That's right.
I've seen a lot of both. But I think that one thing that's central to all of it is community. And to build a community, especially, it is very true about misery loves company. I mean,
Yes.
Whoever made up that saying, they're right on target, because if you've got somebody suffering from the same thing that you are, and you talk to them and find out what they've been doing, you may pick up a point that is very helpful, or not. But the whole point is there's communication. And I think beforehand, a lot of people would suffer in silence. But now, I think a sense of community and community building, I think that's one of the things that we're after, is that we can have a community of people who created art, whether they're patients or whether they're whatever they do in life, or if you divide the world into patients and non-patients, that pretty much takes care of it. But we want to build a safe community where everybody can express themselves and they're like-minded. So I just think that's extremely important. So,
and along with Steve's point, communities can be open and the community can be, now for the children's platform, everything has to go through the parent or / those in loco parentes from a legal term. Those are the have custody or the guardians of the children's account. So if they're underage, you know, they're going to have to, so they say, hey, you know, I'm in the children's wing and, you know, I've been making paper mache this or origami or whatever it is, you know, little things, and little Johnny's been drawing, you know, even no matter what the drawing looks like, if it's the best in the world or if it's something they sell on Artsy or, you know, Sotheby's for ridiculous amounts of money. But you
one
know,
never knows.
no, the truth is the truth. I mean,
One
you
never
gotta do is
knows.
pull the sites up and you go, you know, I think my dog, if he stepped in some paint and went on the canvas, would look better than that. But you know, art's in the eye of the beholder. But what we wanted to do is make sure that, let's say you have a couple people and the nurse says, I really have gotten attached to this kid in this wing or this ward, you know, the time they've been here. This one that's leaving, this other child, they've been such close little friends while they you know, made contact and positive reinforcement for each other. How do they do that? Well, the way would be that that child's parent, and can be, you know, maybe done because of HIPAA violations and all that. You have to be very careful with this stuff. So we are, they can contact, you know, with a request through the hospital, clinic, whatever it might be, recovery center, rehab center, nursing home, whatever. They can contact, especially for a kid wouldn't be in a nursing home, but some of those geriatrics act like they're pediatrics, you know.
Well, I mean, there is a fine
When we
line.
get there, they're just going to say, gentlemen, this cliff right here, it's a swimming pool, walk off it. But for children, they're going to have to go through the parent of the child they want to be friends with, because they may want to know more about the parent and the parent's family and all this, and then the parent can then invite the other parent to be part of that community, and then they can give access to the child so everything's safe. We will be monitoring, and it doesn't matter if there's 5 people on the social media side or if there's 50 million on the social media side, which we hope you will join. But there is no cost, and it's something like Steve said, community is so important because, you know, it allows you to explore different interests on there as far as art, creative music, poetry, whatever it might be. You know, it helps children with self-understanding so they can kind of communicate with other children. Like Steve said, that might be like-minded or other kids who may be going through similar things or be scared. So they have someone there they can kind of share with. You know, it builds stronger relationships in that way, which are all things that release statistically positive endorphins to help you heal quicker, to maybe heal more, or even if it's something more external, it may help with the quality of life during the time that that child or that person has. So we're very passionate about this. We know that, you know, a lot of agencies would like screen times, yeah, as far as children, limited, and you should limit it. You know, the NIH, which is the government website for basically for healthcare and stuff, there's several of them that put out guidelines which says that, you know, if you've got an infant, you should avoid screen time as much as possible. And there are some statistics out there stating the amount of, you know, there's a high percentage, and it's well over 60% of parents who let children just lay and watch and be on screen time when they're infants and in diapers. You know, because they're busy, they're trying to keep the child occupied with whatever the, you know, the show may be. And as far as studies go, back in 2021, it was about 3.5 hours per day for social media usage as far as 8th to 10th graders. That's grown to around 5 hours a day on average for those same groups. Again, this is through the NIH. You can check that out through their website, nih.gov, and just pull up the subject matter. It'll go into it. So what we want to do is make sure that when people get on there, they're, you know, they're trying to build communities. So maybe little Sally's grandma, someone, you know, who probably knows computer better than Steve, even if she is a senior.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let's say, you know, grandma and little Sally can't really communicate well, but she's got, you know, the parent comes in and they bring their iPad or whatever, their phone, they can then voice chat, message, send grandma and grandpa their latest little artwork. They can show where that artwork has then been uploaded to the William Snodgrass Gallery, you know, and maybe that artwork's on there, and you know, the kid said, oh, I don't think this art's good enough, but mom and dad said, sure, let's put it on there for $25. And then, you know, even with today's inflation, maybe grandma and grandpa or aunt or uncle or church, social club, people's friends, parents, whoever, come off that wallet for that $25, and you buy that, you know, through the gallery for that kid's going to get the money for it, the whole $25. One is the way we have it set up. There's no cost to be a part of this social media platform for adults or children or patients or anybody. So that's one of the big things we wanted. We do this through our other avenues and the support we have from, you know, the different projects we have going. So, but if a child, as Steve has said in previous podcasts, and will continue to say, there's one thing to create art, which is great. There's another thing to sell that art. So if little Johnny gets or little Sally gets you know, a letter, congratulations, you're a gallery represented artist or a gallery represented, you know, client, you have now sold your first piece of artwork, especially if it's something where, you know, not to give things away, but we want to utilize and incorporate this platform to allow people to integrate that into their art therapy programs. And by doing that, I'll give you an example. You have a child that, like I said, created a piece of artwork, or several children, maybe in a ward, children's ward. They get their artwork put online as a collective group or an individual, and they can monitor that. They see where the artwork is then sold. You could then, and this is for the caregivers or facilitators of you know, hospitals and treatment centers or rehab centers, you then, for that child or adult, I guess, you could go in there, and if you have a publication of any type, you can then do a little photo shoot that, you know, this is a child holding that piece of art, or the adult, or the geriatric, or the senior, whatever, that person's holding that artwork. It's made a big little to-do about it. That's going to boost their, you know, that's going to boost their self-esteem. Oh, yeah. It's going to help them to have a creative purpose in life. And so those are the things we're looking at doing with the social media platforms. And as I said, social media is great as long as it's done in a respectful and it's done in a controlled environment. And I don't mean controlled like communism, because I'm about as opposite of that as you can get. I'm talking about controlled as far as parental controls or controls even for the adult sites. We don't allow any inappropriate material to be on there. We won't allow, and the AIs and the cyber checks catch pretty much all that. We can't guarantee 100%, but we're pretty close, and it will get pulled off immediately if you do anything or any type of appropriate language, any type of cyberbullying. None of that will be allowed, and all that will be called, and all that will be, and then anybody that even does that, they'll be removed permanently and blocked, banned from the sites, and won't be allowed on there, because we are trying to do something to incorporate the social media as one of the components, one of the key components of the art therapy program and art and healing. Because we know it can work, but even if you have, you know, I'll throw out Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, whatever it is, you're on there with everybody else. And you're on there with everybody else that can literally see everything, do everything, make comments, post anything. And so we want to make sure that, you know, these social media platforms are set up just for that niche. And while, yes, there's hundreds of different niches in the marketplace, could be for anything, we want one specifically for those who are in art therapy and those that are artists, so the art community comes. And there are some websites that have platforms where artists can go in there and join, and, you know, they pay a monthly fee, as Steve has said, to be part of it. You can post things, create things, sell things, but that's all kind of superficial, and it's not very, what's the word I'm looking for, or the phrase rather. It's not very community building.
Usual and customary.
Yeah, usual and customary. Thank you. So we want to make sure it becomes usual and customary in a way that everybody can utilize it, but it is a great thing for, you know, children. I've been a child advocate for decades now and still work with kids, and, you know, help support them in many different ways, both through my church and through other organizations. And I can tell you, nothing brings a smile on somebody's face like kids who create projects and then get to sell those projects, whether it's through school, whether it's through a scouting organization, that would be the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts. You know, I was a Cub Scout and things, so that was the way it went. However,
I've seen that on your resume.
yeah. Yes, obviously, right below the term Riri. The social media platforms, you know, according to the Surgeon General, has a lot of potential benefits. You know, it helps enhance communication skills. You know, it can provide actual health education services. So, and to give you another example, maybe you have a hospital chain that says, you know, we like it, but how can we get our like healthy eating on there, or, you know, art therapy along with healthy eating and along with diet and exercise, whatever. Well, those are things that as a community, you can join other communities. So let's say you have, we'll be announcing a partnership coming up with one of the, you know, largest hospital chains in the world that are in 27 different countries.
Yes.
And millions and millions of patients. We already have it. We're just, you know, we want to invite them on so we can do it as kind of a big announcement, you know, and welcome them, and then, you know, have them talk about art and healing and art therapy. But let's say you have the hospital joins in with that private social media network, and then they can offer their classes, their guidelines, specifically maybe designed for that age and that patient group, or for you know, a cluster of in a category of patients that may need that. So it could be anything from arthritis, like I said, the healthy eating as a child, to the things, water intake, whatever it is. Those communities can be started because they'll be overseen obviously by the hospital administrators or those that are over the developmental policies for those facilities. And then that can allow access, which grants greater personal communication or interpersonal communication with the patients, not just at the time, but allows them to be able to do that as a follow-up, because in post-op a lot of times, you know, it's like out of sight, out of mind. So, you know, you're out there on your own, and if you can still communicate, maybe you can talk to, you know, I use these names, I don't even know who these people are, but Leslie the nurse, you know.
I know her.
That would be a lot better. I didn't say Broomhilda. So, but Leslie the nurse, you know her, okay. But, you know, maybe through the parent, they allow the child while they're monitoring, and it's always suggested that minors are always monitored their screen time by a parent or a guardian. And that doesn't mean that 8-year-olds on social media and the 12-year-old sister or brothers got the tablet watching what they're doing. That would be an actual, you know, parent or guardian. But they can communicate back and forth, leave a message, talk to them, maybe send them their latest drawing or whatever. And not that this would put more of a workload on the nurses or doctors or whoever, but it's just a way to keep the communication lines open, especially if it's someone who's going to be in and out of the hospitals over a period of time, or as follow-ups, or maybe it's somebody that they, you know, that they struck up a friendship with. And, you know, I'm sure as nurses and practitioners see patients, there are some that maybe, you know, they just absolutely fall in love with, and I mean in a way that, like caring for child or whatever. So to them, what a great and compassionate way to keep up on people's lives without having to fully delve into it, but at the same time they can see the growth and maturity, or the, you know, the life changes that they go along, which is thanking that practitioner. So it helps mentally all the way around as a community, not just for immediate family, but for those you invite into that.
And I think, like, just for example, like if you're taking care of a patient and you do develop like a special bond with them and that sort of thing, and that kid creates a piece of art, and then you buy that art as a kind of a memento just saying like, well, this was the patient I took care of and they really had a rough go of it, but they ended up with a great outcome, that sort of thing. And I'm going to buy that piece of art as a constant reminder of that person. And so all we're trying to do is foster creativity and then take away some of these burdens and some of this pain and distribute it to where it's not so bad anymore. And it makes things very tolerable because, you know, it's one of those things no one enjoys any kind of, well, there's some, we won't get into that, that's a whole other podcast, but there's some that just really enjoy surgery. But for the most part, it is quite a chore for everybody in the entire family to have to take care of that patient, and it's a drain on everybody. That's just part of life. But so we want to try to make that burden as easy as possible, and
Right.
And if we can do that, then we've accomplished our task.
Yes, and it's not something where people have to worry about, oh, this thing's going to hit me up with 50,000 ads. It's going to be, you know, exposing me to advertising. I'm going to have all this exposure to negative content. That's not allowed. I'm not saying we're a purist Christian site, but being Southern Baptist again, you know, I'm very conservative, but very moderate at the same time. And I know that, you know, and it's something that's big on me because of first responders and suicide rates. Steve mentioned it, which is shocking to me, about female physicians and their suicide rates.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It is. And so just think about this from a mental health standpoint. You're creating and fostering creativity, positive endorphins, a closer community. So what happens is maybe you have, in teens, it's really bad right now as far as statistically for suicides. Young people, you see this all the time, cyberbullying and everything. But if they have an outlet, whether they're a patient or whether it's just the patient's brother, sister, family member, or just this is open for anybody, not just patients, but, you know, as far as adolescents and minors through their family, of course. But if they can get a community, they can talk, and that child or teen or preteen or young adult is making comments about, I really contemplated suicide, and, you know, I don't know why life's worth it. We're doing this. That interpersonal communications between others, not only is it monitored by the parents to see how much screen time and then what they've been discussing and stuff. So again, it's a very open platform for the person that's over the community or the parent. But that can hopefully save some lives. You know, if you've got where you see there's some characteristics or changes, those are things that can be part of the health education system instead of advertisements, maybe, you know, through the American Academy of Psychology or Psychology Association.
You mean it's like psychiatric? Like there's
Yes.
an American Psychiatric Association.
Okay, so
Yes.
can have guidelines and maybe simplified ways, you know, this from therapists, whoever it may be, or from the general guidelines. These are the things to watch for. So we want it to be an educational platform, but mainly focused on community building, interpersonal relationships, art therapy, things that overall generally will make someone's life better, because there's nothing more than having a healthy family, having a healthy outlook on life, and being a productive member of society. And if you don't feel that you're part of any of that, you know, it gets pretty bleak. And I would imagine, that's where some of these female physicians and some of these first responders get to that point. Like, what am I doing that matters? And so we want to give them, like Steve said, a creative outlet through the gallery to be able to not only create, but then to list and hopefully sell, and then receive the accolades for that. There's nothing greater. So, and we know not everybody, as I've said before, I can't make a crooked line, let alone a straight one. So you don't want me drawing anything. I know how to deconstruct a body, but that's not really art. I guess it could be.
Oh yeah, it is. It really is. Trust me.
But we want everybody to be inclusive in this way, so that no matter what your medium is of art, you can come in. And like I said, my big thing is I would really like to see it utilized in a patient environment.
Mm-hmm.
And while it's open to everybody, I would love to see it because I think it becomes a critical part of the art therapy, which will help art therapy become usual and customary.
There you go.
For everybody, because, you know, as I said, there are stats after stats. The American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, you know, they talk about how much time children should spend on, you know, social media platforms, and, you know, reported well over 95% of the teens in the world currently have access to smartphones and social media, which that's just huge. You know, when you get the children 2 and under, you know, they have an extremely hard time understanding what's on these screens. They basically just see, you know, pixels and colors and those vibrant things, but they don't know. But it's still, as they get older and they get accustomed to that, it becomes habitual, so it becomes habit forming. And so that becomes part of their everyday instead of playing outside, instead of, you know, looking to spend time with friends. Their head's bent and they're in those tablets or phones. And so that becomes their social network. And that's why if you look up statistics on young men and young ladies dating, getting married, there's some studies out currently that would just blow most people's mind about how long it's actually taking young men to actually speak personally with a young lady, to ask her out on a date, to then become committed, then get married. So, you know, this has a far-reaching effect. And I'm not saying our platform is going to solve all that. If you're listening from the Nobel Peace Prize or Nobel Prize for Medicine, that's just a joke. But, you know, we want to make sure that, and you're going to see, there'll be a couple breaks where, you know, a couple times where you're going to see, you know, the platform and how you can go and check the platform out, and you'll be able to do that. As I said, we just want this to be something where everybody has an opportunity to have a nice, safe space, because there have been some wonderful, you know, social media platforms for children. There's been a few anyway, and those either get bought out, they close down because they morph into something else. They morph into becoming gaming or a niche market for specific things that the social media platform brought out. And that's not our goal. Our goal is to use this as part of the, you know, the art therapy community to help everyone and to make it available for any facility, for any, whether it's children, you know, adults, seniors, rehab centers, whether it's, you know, hospitals, hospice care centers, no matter what it is. We wanted something that is not going to cost them, and at the same time can be utilized to foster this healing and healthy environment.
Yeah, you just don't want to date your iPhone.
That's true.
That's true. And I think, you know, there's actually a lot of that kind of going on from what I've read.
As I said, mental health is very important. And so we want to make sure that
well, let me ask you this. How many times have you been out in a restaurant or whatever, and you see like a couple eating dinner, and then they both pull out their iPhones?
Statistically, it's true that a lot of them, when they go on dates, they literally, now there's a thing where if they go on their first date, they really haven't spoken hardly any words to each other. It's all been through texting or through messaging. Yeah. And they get there to the date, and they're actually doing that at first until they're comfortable with the person. Yeah. You know.
So as long as you're looking at our site, we're okay with it.
Yeah. Well, we don't have speed texting / speed dating on there, so you know
that's coming up.
Yeah,
we are innovative. You know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, but I've seen it many times, and so I'm making a point, just like, hey, if I'm out to dinner, I just leave my iPhone tucked away. So, but that really is a problem. And
it is.
Yeah. And, but again, it's today's world, but you know, the thing about us is that we have created something that's constructive, not destructive. And there's a big difference, but it's usually just one or the other. I compared like surgery to the martial arts all the time. Mm-hmm. Is that surgery is constructive, martial arts destructive, but really they're both art forms. Mm-hmm. They really are. And and I think that's one of the reasons that, well, we complement each other so well, is because you have your strengths in what you do, and I do as well, and when we combine them, it works. But it's one of those things where, for me, I'm glad you're with this part, because I would never be able to do it, because I really don't understand what happens to my technology stuff. I don't know what happens.
Yes, as I'm well aware.
As you are.
And like we said, we have guidelines on there, and we make recommendations like anybody else through, the NIH, and then like you said, the Children's Psychiatric Academy and all that is, if you can, and this is hard for a lot of parents, no screens in the bedroom. Basically, make sure that, you have some type of media limit or curfew, that, there's no texting, no on the phone, no anything, social media of any type, or screen time, at least an hour before bedtime. And when it's mealtime or dinner time, or lunch or breakfast, there's no phones at the table. As Steve said, I do the same thing. And I tell people, you need to take time, no matter what, and not just as an individual, as a family, and just say, we're gonna go do this, or we're gonna do this, we're gonna unplug for this time period. So, messages will be there when you get the phone back on, but for that hour, 3 hours, whatever, you're gonna be unplugging. And then you just need to stick to that, and make a guideline for your family. And there's plenty online from NIH to about every child or adolescent or adult, psychological association or psychiatric association has all these guidelines. There are media groups out there, the government media groups all have these, and that way you can make sure, and you go over the rules with your children as well as those, family members. The rules are pretty strict on our social media site. There'll be nothing on there, nothing that's deemed inappropriate or, can be considered, socially unacceptable. Not only as something you're viewing, but something you're letting your child or, your partner or whoever put on there about somebody. I mean, there are a lot of keyboard warriors out there, but, come face to face, the majority of them are not going to say anything. They're just going to, they're going to put their head down, get in their phone, and walk away. So we just, as Steve said, and I've said, we want this to be constructive, not destructive.
That's right. That's right.
So.
And there's one thing too, I really love, and I love to play this game, but there's a painting that I like to talk about, and it's from another artist, and I never, and I'm gonna say my hat's off to this artist, but it's funny because the painting is extremely simplistic, very simplistic. I'm not gonna get into all, but it really looks like it was done with a stencil. Yeah. And I ask people this all the time, because they're into the art, and they start talking about art pricing and this and that and all that sort of thing. And I just said, okay, do you consider yourself a reasonable judge of art? Or, yeah, I feel like I know a little bit of something about it. I was like, okay, let me just show you something. And I showed them the painting. I just said, just for the heck of it, tell me what you think that painting just sold for. And they're just saying well, since you're putting it that way, I'm going to say that painting sold for quite a bit of money. And I just said, well, put a price tag on it. What do you think? And, I've had one person say $5,000. And then I've had one person say I'd say $250, something like that. I said, that painting just sold for $30 million. And they are just their mouths just drop open. They can't believe it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you never know what happens. And,
No.
One of the things that I really hope will happen because of this, and I hope it happens more than once, but if it happens once, it would be great, is you got a kid, preferably the kid is a patient, and they create a piece of art. And as a result of creating a piece of art, they put it on our gallery and it sells. And now that kid is psyched up. He's like, oh, I really can do this. and then they just continuously develop their artistic talent that we helped uncover. That and for them to be like, have a career in art, and I'll probably be dead by then, but they'll just say, this all started when I was a patient at this hospital, and these two crazy guys started this art gallery. And I was like, oh heck, I don't have anything to lose. And my parents said, sure, we'll pay the $5. And then the kid ends up being like this world famous artist, and he can refer back to that moment. I just think that would be like one of the coolest things ever.
Yeah, I just seen online where a child, I think he's very young. He's under the age of 4, 5, 6, something. Did you see that article where he's selling his painting? He just randomly puts paintings on a canvas. They're selling for $7,000 and up right now.
Yeah, good for him.
No, that's what I said. I said, oh my goodness, that little, it looks like a kid almost in their diaper sitting there doing it. And I'm like, that's the craziest thing. But, art can invoke any type of emotion depending on the person. We may not see it. Somebody else may just have to have it. So, that's part of the process, and it's part of the therapeutic process of creating.
Yeah, I really hope that can happen one day, and we live to see it, and that the kid just said like, hey, I started there, and from there it just morphed into, I just kept going, and I just developed and I evolved, and now my paintings are selling for what? Who knows what? 30 million.
Yeah, 30 million.
Yeah,
there you go. Well, that covers that, and like I said, hopefully with the social media screenshots and the links and everything, gives you a better understanding, and we look forward to you being part of the community, and we look forward to you continuing, and thank you for subscribing and watching the Dr. Frank and Steve podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Frank and Steve podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit follow or subscribe on the link provided so you can stay up to date on new episodes. Until next time, stay healthy and stay safe.